February 1st, 1959. The sun sets over the desolate, snow-covered slopes of Kholat-Syakhl in the northern Ural Mountains. A group of 9 experienced hikers, led by Igor Dyatlov, makes their final camp. They are cheerful, laughing, and even putting out a satirical newspaper, the Evening Autorten. Their diaries are filled with the usual tales of a challenging but rewarding expedition. They write about the beauty of the landscape, the camaraderie, and the minor struggles of trekking through deep snow and biting winds. But as night falls, something goes terribly wrong. What happened to these 9 young people would become one of the most chilling and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. My name is Alex, and today we're diving deep into the beginning of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, piecing together the final days of the group through their own words and photos, looking for the ominous signs they may have missed. Our story begins in late January 1959. A team of 10 students and graduates from the Euro Polytechnical Institute, all seasoned winter hikers, set off on a journey they expected to be the adventure of a lifetime. The goal was to ski across the unforgiving northern Urals and summit Mount Otor. The team was composed of Igor Dyatlov, the 23-year-old leader, Sineda Kolmogorova, Lyudmila Dubinina, Alexander Kolevatov, Rustem Slovadin, Georgy Kribonisenko, Yuri Uden, Yuri Doroshenko, Nicholas Tibobrigno. A 10th member, Semyon Zolotaryov, a 28-year-old instructor, joined them, much to the surprise of the others. From the very start, the journey was a test of their endurance. Photos recovered from their cameras show them smiling, pushing through waist-deep snow, building fires, and huddling together for warmth. Their diary entries reflect this spirit. Zina Kolmogorova wrote, "It's hard to walk. We have to clear a path. The guys are grumbling, but we keep going." They were a tight-knit group, full of life and optimism. On January 27th, they reached the last inhabited settlement, a village called Here, they spent the night, enjoying the warmth and hospitality of the locals. The next day, one member, Yuri Uden, was forced to turn back due to severe sciatic pain. He said goodbye to his friends, never imagining he would be the only one to survive. It was a twist of fate that would haunt him for the rest of his life. As the remaining 9 pushed deeper into the wilderness, their diaries and photos provide our only window into their experience. They were now in a region known by the local Mansi people as the Mountain of the Dead in Iriname, but one that didn't seem to faze the scientifically minded hikers. They documented everything meticulously. One photo shows them setting up their tent. Another shows them huddled around a small stove. The mood was still good. Georgy Krivonyshenko played his mandolin, and they sang songs to keep their spirits up. But subtle clues in their writings suggest the atmosphere was beginning to shift. On January 30th, they encountered strong winds and extremely low temperatures. One entry reads, "The wind is like that from an airplane taken off." They were forced to make camp in a wooded valley, delaying their progress. The next day, January 31st, they followed a Mansi hunting trail, which eventually disappeared, forcing them to forge their own path through the difficult terrain. It was on this day that they reached the highland area and prepared for the final push to the slopes of Kholat. This brings us to February 1st, their last full day alive. They began their ascent onto the mountain's exposed eastern slope. It was a questionable decision. Standard practice for winter hikers is to make camp in a forested area, which offers protection from the elements. Why did Dyatlov, an experienced leader, choose to pitch their tent on an open, windswept slope, just a mile from the safety of the tree line? Was it a simple navigational error, or was he trying to practice altitude camping for the next day's climb? We may never know. Their final photographs, taken on that fateful evening, are particularly haunting. One shows them digging a platform for their tent in the deep snow. They look tired, but focused. The last photo ever taken is a strange, blurry image from inside the tent. It seems to show a bright, orange orb or a light in the dark sky. Was this a camera malfunction, a flare, or something else entirely? This single image has fueled countless theories over the decades. That night, they ate a simple meal of bacon and crackers. They wrote in their diaries and even produced that final, cheerful issue of their satirical camp newspaper. There is no hint of panic or fear in these last entries. everything appeared normal. They settled in for the night, 9 friends bundled together against the brutal cold of the Ural winter. But sometime during the night, an unknown event triggered a sequence of actions so bizarre and terrifying that it defies all logical explanation. The search party wouldn't find their abandoned tent for another 3 weeks. What they discovered was a scene of pure chaos. The tent had been sliced open from the inside. All of the group's belongings, their warm clothes, their boots, their food were left behind. Barefoot tracks in the snow led down the slope toward the tree line, a mile away. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of another person or animal. It was as if they had been driven out into the deadly cold by an unseen, terrifying force. The hikers had everything they needed to survive. They were experienced, well-equipped, and mentally tough. Yet, they abandoned their only shelter, fled without proper clothing into temperatures of minus 30 degrees Celsius, and met their ends in various, equally baffling circumstances. In our next episode, we will examine the grim discoveries made by the search party, the positions of the bodies, the strange injuries they sustained, and the forensic evidence that only deepens the mystery. What could have caused these seasoned hikers to act so irrationally? We'll explore the initial theories, from an avalanche to an animal attack, and see why none of them seem to fully fit the bizarre and horrifying facts of the case. The story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident is just beginning, and the more you learn, the stranger it gets. February 1959. The Ural Mountains of the Soviet Union. 9 experienced hikers set out on an expedition to a peak known as Otorten. They never returned. What happened on that remote, desolate mountain, known to the local Mansi people as Kolitsa, or Dead Mountain, has become one of the most chilling and enduring mysteries of the 20th century. My name is Alex, and today we're going to reconstruct the final, terrifying hours of the Dyatlov group and explore the disturbing scene that awaited the search party. Our story begins with 10 hikers, mostly students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, led by the 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. One member, Yuri Huden, was forced to turn back early due to illness, a decision that would ultimately save his life. The remaining 9 men and 2 women continued their trek, documenting their journey with diaries and cameras. Their photos show a group full of life, smiling, skiing, and embracing the harsh beauty of the Siberian wilderness. They were skilled, prepared, and in high spirits. Their last diary entry, dated January 31st, describes their progress and their plan to set up camp on the slopes of Otorten the following day. But they never reached their destination. On February 1st, a blizzard descended upon the region with plummeting temperatures and hurricane-force winds. Visibility dropped to near zero. Instead of pushing towards the tree line for shelter, the group made a baffling decision. They pitched their tent high on the exposed eastern slope of Kolitsa, about a mile away from the relative safety of the forest. Why? Was it a simple navigational error in the blinding snow? Or was there another reason they stopped in such a dangerous, open location? This was the first of many bizarre choices that would lead to their doom. The stage was set for a night of unimaginable terror. When the group failed to send a telegram by their expected return date of February 12th, their families grew worried. A search and rescue operation was launched on February 20th. For 6 days, searchers on skis and an aircraft scoured the vast, snow-covered landscape. Finally, on February 26th, they found it. The hikers' abandoned tent. What they discovered was not the scene of a simple accident. It was the beginning of a puzzle that would confound investigators for decades. The tent was half buried in snow and badly damaged. But the most shocking detail was how it was damaged. It had been sliced open from the inside. The group's belongings, skis, food, warm coats, and boots were all still neatly arranged inside. It was clear that, whatever had happened, it caused the 9 experienced hikers to slash their way out of their only shelter and flee into the brutal sub-zero wilderness, catastrophically under. Some were barefoot, others wearing only socks or a single boot. They ran from the tent in a state of sheer panic, leaving behind everything they needed to survive. The crucial question is, what were they running from? The tracks leading away from the tent told a strange story. 8 or 9 sets of footprints descended the slope in an orderly fashion, not scattered as if fleeing a wild animal attack. They walked calmly, side by side, for nearly a mile, towards the forest edge. There was no sign of a struggle, no evidence of other people being present. It was as if they had willingly, almost methodically, walked away from their camp to face certain death in the freezing darkness. The first two bodies were found at the edge of the forest, beneath a large cedar tree. Yuri Krivonishenko and Yuri Doroshenko were found lying next to the remains of a small, hastily built fire. They were dressed only in their underwear. The branches on the cedar tree above them were broken up to a height of 5 meters, suggesting someone had desperately tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view of the tent, or to escape something on the ground. Despite their efforts, they had frozen to death. The next 3 bodies, including that of group leader Igor Dyatlov, were found between the cedar tree and the camp. They were discovered at different distances, suggesting they were trying to make their way back up the slope to the tent. Dyatlov was found clutching a birch branch, his other hand raised as if to shield his face. Zineda Kolmogorova was found furthest up the slope, a picture of desperate, frozen struggle. Rustem Slobodin had a small crack in his skull, though it was deemed non-fatal. It seemed their story was a tragic but straightforward one of hypothermia. They had panicked, fled their tent, and succumbed to the elements. But the discovery of the final 4 hikers, 2 months later, would change everything. In May, as the snow began to melt, the last 4 bodies were found in a ravine, about 75 meters away from the cedar tree, buried under 4 meters of snow. And these bodies were different. Nicolas Thibault-Brignoles had suffered a massive, crushing skull fracture. Ludmila Dubanina and Semyon Zolotaryov had sustained catastrophic chest injuries, with multiple broken ribs. A doctor who examined them compared the force of their injuries to that of being hit by a car. Crucially, these severe internal injuries had no corresponding external damage, no soft tissue bruising. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, overwhelming pressure. To make things even stranger, Dubanina was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lip, while Zolotaryov was missing his eyeballs. The investigation was officially closed, just 3 months after it began. The final verdict was that the hikers had died as a result of a compelling natural force. This vague conclusion satisfied no one and only fueled speculation. What kind of natural force could cause experienced hikers to abandon their shelter, inflict such bizarre and violent injuries, and leave no trace? Over the years, theories have ranged from the plausible to the outright paranormal. One of the most common early theories was an attack by the local Mansi people for trespassing on sacred land. But this was quickly dismissed. The nature of the injuries didn't match an assault, and there were no signs of a struggle or foreign footprints. Another theory points to an avalanche. This could explain the sudden need to cut their way out of the tent and the crushing internal injuries. However, seasoned investigators and mountaineers who visited the site found no evidence of a slab avalanche. The slope wasn't steep enough, and the tent was only partially collapsed by snow that had drifted there over weeks, not buried by a sudden slide. Then there are the more sensational theories. The area was a known site for Soviet military tests. Could the hikers have stumbled upon a secret weapons test? Some reports from other hiking groups in the region that night mentioned seeing strange orange spheres or lights in the sky. This led to speculation about everything from parachute mines to secret radiological weapons. In fact, some of the hikers' clothing was found to have low levels of radioactive contamination. While officials claimed it was from a known source, the explanation remains contested. Was the radioactivity the cause of their panic, or just a coincidence? The infrasound theory suggests that a rare natural phenomenon called a Kármán vortex street could have been generated by the wind moving over the mountain. This can create extremely low-frequency sound waves, which are inaudible to humans, but can induce intense feelings of panic, dread, and nausea, causing irrational behavior. This could explain why they fled the tent in terror. The internal injuries, however, remain unexplained by this theory. And of course, no unexplained mystery is complete without theories of the otherworldly. Some have suggested the involvement of a UFO or an encounter with a creature like a Russian Yeti. While there's no physical evidence to support these claims, the sheer strangeness of the event keeps them in the conversation. The missing tongues and eyes have been explained by some as natural scavenging by small animals after death. But the precise and gruesome nature of these injuries has led others to believe something far more sinister was at play. In 2019, the Russian government reopened the case, driven by a continued public interest. Their investigation, using modern modeling, concluded that a small slab avalanche was indeed the most likely culprit. They proposed that a small slide hit the back of the tent, causing the initial panic. The group fled to a safer ridge to wait it out. When some tried to return for supplies, they got lost in the darkness and blizzard conditions. The four found in the ravine, they argue, fell into the snow-filled ravine and were crushed by the weight of the snow above them. While this theory offers a neat, natural explanation, many critics find it has too many holes. It doesn't fully explain the lack of external trauma, the radiation, or the strange lights reported in the sky. The story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident is a haunting tapestry woven from bravery, mystery, and tragedy. It is a chilling reminder of the power of nature and the unsettling reality that some questions may never have answers. We have facts, photographs, and diaries. But the truth of what happened on that frozen mountainside on that night of terror was buried with the 9 hikers who never came home. The compelling natural force remains as mysterious and elusive today as it was in 1959. What do you think happened on Dead Mountain? Was it an avalanche, a secret military experiment, or something else entirely? Let me know your theories in the comments below. This isn't just a story. It's an autopsy of the unknown. We're going to examine the bizarre evidence, the confounding clues, and the wild theories that surround a group of experienced hikers who met a tragic and inexplicable end in the remote wilderness. What could have happened on that frozen, desolate mountainside that led to such a bewildering scene? The discovery was horrifying. The hiker's tent was found sliced open, but not from the outside, from the inside. It was as if they were desperately trying to escape something within their own shelter. Their belongings, including warm clothing and supplies, were left behind as they fled into the brutal, sub-zero temperatures. Some were found wearing only their undergarments, a detail that makes absolutely no sense given the extreme weather. The scene suggested a sudden, panicked flight, but from what? There were no signs of a struggle with other people, no evidence of an animal attack, just the silent, frozen landscape and a group of experienced outdoorsmen who had abandoned their only source of safety. The initial autopsies only deepened the mystery. While some of the hikers succumbed to hypothermia, which was expected given the conditions, others had sustained injuries that were simply shocking. One victim had a fractured skull, and 2 others had major chest fractures. According to the medical examiner, the force required to cause such damage would be equivalent to a high-speed car crash. Yet, here's the truly bizarre part. There were no external signs of trauma. No bruises, no soft tissue damage. It was as if they had been crushed by an immense, invisible force. How is that possible? This single piece of evidence throws a wrench in any simple explanation. It defies our understanding of physics and trauma. And then, things got even stranger. When their clothing was tested, it was found to be significantly radioactive. Not just a small trace, but levels high enough to be considered dangerous. Where did this radiation come from? There were no known nuclear facilities or fallout zones anywhere near the area. This discovery has fueled countless theories, from secret military weapons testing to something far more otherworldly. The presence of radiation adds a layer of high-tech, almost science fiction-like dread to an already baffling wilderness tragedy. Was it a contaminated object they found, or were they exposed to a radioactive source that appeared and then vanished without a trace? The questions just keep piling up, each one more unsettling than the last. So let's start piecing together the theories, from the mundane to the truly The first and most grounded explanation is a natural phenomenon. Some have proposed that an avalanche was the cause. This could explain the tent being ripped open and the desperate flight. The internal crush injuries could potentially be explained by the immense pressure of snow. However, this theory has major holes. Investigators at the scene found no definitive evidence of a recent avalanche. The hikers' tracks were still visible in the snow, which wouldn't be the case if tons of snow had just barreled down the mountain. Plus, an avalanche doesn't explain the radioactive clothing. It's a neat theory, but it just doesn't fit all the facts. Another natural explanation that has gained some traction is this is sound at a frequency so low humans can't hear it, but it can have profound physiological and psychological effects. Certain wind patterns, when interacting with specific topography, can create powerful infrasound waves. It's been known to cause feelings of intense panic, dread, and even physical discomfort. The theory goes that a rare infrasound event drove the hikers into an irrational panic, causing them to cut their way out of the tent and flee into the deadly cold. This could explain their bizarre behavior, but again, it falls short of explaining the massive internal injuries and the radiation. It's a compelling piece of the puzzle, but not the whole picture. Now, we venture into the more speculative territory. Let's talk about the military. Given the Cold War era in which this event took place, the idea of secret weapons testing isn't so far-fetched. The area was known to be within the flight path of Soviet rockets. Could the hikers have stumbled upon a secret test of some kind of concussive or radiological weapon? This would explain the powerful force that caused the injuries and the presence of radiation. It would also explain why the official investigation was so quickly and quietly concluded, with files classified for years. Perhaps the government was covering up a fatal accident involving its own secret technology. It's a theory that connects the dots of radiation and strange injuries, but it relies on a government conspiracy for which we have no concrete proof. And, finally, we arrive at the theory that has captured the public imagination for decades. An encounter with something not of this world, unidentified flying objects. Believers in this theory point to witness accounts from other groups in the region who reported seeing strange, orange orbs of light in the sky on the night of the incident. Could these lights have been a UFO? Could the hikers have had a close encounter that turned deadly? This theory could potentially explain everything. The panic, the radiation from a propulsion system, and the incomprehensible injuries caused by advanced, unknown technology. It's the wildest theory, for sure. But in a case with so many unexplained elements, is it any less plausible than the others? When all logical explanations fail, maybe it's time to consider the illogical. So, what are we left with? We have a group of 9 dead hikers, a tent sliced open from the inside, inexplicable crush injuries with no external signs, and radioactive clothing. We have theories ranging from avalanches and infrasound to secret military weapons and alien encounters. Each theory explains a piece of the puzzle, but none can satisfyingly explain all of it. The case remains officially unsolved, a chilling testament to the fact that there are still things in this world that we simply cannot understand. The wilderness holds deep secrets, and on that cold, fateful night, it seems these hikers stumbled upon one of them. This autopsy of the unknown leaves us with more questions than answers. It's a mystery that challenges our perception of the world and the forces that operate within it. What do you think happened on that mountain? Was it a freak of nature, a military secret, or something else entirely? In the dead of a Russian winter, on a desolate slope in the Ural Mountains, something went terribly wrong. 9 experienced hikers, all students from the Ural Polytechnical Institute, set out on an expedition they would never return from. Their bodies were discovered weeks later, scattered across the frozen landscape, under circumstances so bizarre and terrifying that they defy simple explanation. This is the story of the Dyatlov Pass Incident, a mystery that has haunted Russia for over 60 years. Our story begins in January 1959. Igor Dyatlov, a skilled and respected mountaineer, led a team of 8 men and 2 women on a challenging trek to a Torten mountain. The group was well-equipped, and meticulously documented their journey through diaries and photographs. Their last photos show them setting up camp on the slopes of Koat Sayakel, a name that translates from the local Mansi language as Dead Mountain. A chilling premonition, perhaps. The alarm was raised when the group failed to send a prearranged telegram on February 12th. Search parties were dispatched, and what they found on February 26th was a scene of pure chaos. The hiker's tent was discovered abandoned, half buried in snow. More disturbingly, it had been slashed open from the inside. It was as if something had driven the occupants out into the brutal sub-zero wilderness, in a state of utter panic. The searchers followed a trail of footprints leading away from the tent. The prints were made by people wearing only socks, or even barefoot. Imagine the sheer terror that would force 9 seasoned hikers to flee their only shelter, inadequately dressed, into a blizzard with temperatures plummeting to minus 30 degrees Celsius. The first 2 bodies, Yuri Krivonoshenko and Yuri Doroshenko, were found under a large cedar tree, about a mile from the camp. They were stripped down to their underwear. Nearby were the remains of a small fire. The branches of the cedar tree were broken up to 5 meters high, suggesting someone had desperately tried to climb it, perhaps to get a better view or escape a threat on the ground. The next 3 bodies, including that of group leader Igor Dyatlov, were found between the cedar tree and the tent. Their positions suggested they were trying to crawl back to the safety of their camp but succumbed to the freezing cold. So far, the tragedy, while strange, could be explained by hypothermia. But what investigators found next would turn a sad accident into an enduring enigma. It took another 2 months for the spring thaw to reveal the remaining 4 hikers, buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine, a short distance from the cedar tree. And their injuries were horrific. Lyudmila Dubinina had massive chest trauma, with several broken ribs. Semyon Zolotaryov had similar crushing chest injuries. Both of these injuries, according to the medical examiner, were consistent with the force of a high-speed car crash, yet there were no external wounds. Alexander Kolevatov had a fractured skull. Even more strangely, Dubinina was missing her tongue, eyes, and parts of her lips. Zolotaryov was missing his eyeballs. The initial Soviet investigation was hastily concluded. The official verdict: the hikers died from a compelling natural force. The case files were classified and locked away for decades, fueling rampant speculation. What could this compelling natural force be? An avalanche seemed like the most logical explanation. The theory goes that a slab avalanche buried part of the tent, causing the hikers to cut their way out and flee. In the darkness and disorientation, they got separated, and the 4 in the ravine fell, sustaining their injuries on the rocks below. But this theory has holes. The tent wasn't completely buried, and experienced hikers like Dyatlov would have known the area wasn't prone to major avalanches. The footprints leading away from the tent didn't show the frantic, tumbling pattern you'd expect from an avalanche escape. Plus, an avalanche doesn't explain why some of the bodies were missing soft tissue, or why some of their clothes were found to have traces of radiation. Yes, you heard that right. Radiation. Forensic tests on the victims' clothing showed abnormal levels of radioactive contamination. This discovery opened the door to a whole new world of theories, many involving the military. The area around the Ural Mountains was a hotbed of secret Soviet military activity during the Cold War. Could the hikers have stumbled upon a secret weapons test? Some eyewitnesses, including another hiking group miles away, reported seeing strange orange spheres or lights in the sky on the night of the incident. Were these secret rockets, or something else entirely? The secret weapon theory suggests the hikers were either directly hit by the concussive force of a test explosion, causing their internal injuries, or they were blinded and frightened by the flash and noise, leading them to flee their tent in a panic. The radiation on their clothes would certainly fit this scenario. The missing soft tissue scavenging animals could be the simple, grim answer. But the Soviet government has always denied any military activity in that specific area on that night. And then we enter the realm of the truly strange. Theories ranged from an attack by the local Mansi people, which was quickly ruled out as their injuries were not consistent with a human attack, to an encounter with a cryptid like the Russian Yeti. While fascinating, there's no physical evidence to support these claims. The lack of any other footprints, besides the hiker's own, makes an attack by any creature, known or unknown, highly unlikely. Then there's the infrasound theory. This hypothesis suggests that a rare weather phenomenon called a Kármán vortex street could have generated low-frequency sound waves, or this sound, inaudible to the human ear, can induce feelings of intense panic, dread, and physical discomfort. Could this have been the compelling force that drove them mad, making them tear open their tent and run for their lives into the fatal cold? It's a scientifically plausible theory that explains the panic, but it doesn't quite account for the devastating internal injuries. In 2019, Russian authorities reopened the case, hoping modern technology could finally provide a definitive answer. Their conclusion, announced in 2020, was an updated version of the avalanche theory. They proposed that a small, delayed slab avalanche was the trigger. Poor visibility from the blizzard caused the hikers to become disoriented and unable to find their tent. The severe injuries were explained by the crushing weight of the snow. However, for many followers of the case, this explanation feels too neat, too simple. It ignores the radiation, the strange lights in the sky, and the sheer oddity of the victim's final moments. So, Where does that leave us? The Dyatlov Pass Incident is a perfect storm of mystery. Every plausible theory has a counterargument, and every piece of evidence can be interpreted in multiple ways. Was it a natural disaster compounded by human error? A military cover-up hiding a terrible secret, or something stranger? Something that defies our understanding of the world. The story of the 9 hikers is a chilling reminder of the power of nature and the secrets that the wilderness can hold. Their diaries and photos paint a picture of youth, adventure, and friendship, cut short by an unspeakable horror. The mountain, Kholat Syakhl, keeps its silence. The legacy of the Dyatlov group endures not just as a ghost story, but as a profound and unsettling question mark in the annals of unexplained mysteries. The truth, whatever it may be, was buried with them in the snow. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into one of history's most haunting cold cases.